Hello, welcome to Frank's School. I'm going to get to Portugal tomorrow, or at least the next video. These are all, I'm still doing these prequels. Portugal and the Alps, that is my subject, and has been actually, even though I've got all these prequels. Well, I said the last video that it was worth it for me to stop and say a little bit about Morocco, even though it is not directly related to this Portugal and the Alps trip. Nonetheless, I have some things that I think I could share. I've been to Morocco twice. They were close together. And in both cases, I flew into Casablanca, took the bus, I guess it was, I don't remember it well the first time, to Rabat, where a friend of mine, Abdeltif Seket, worked in the Banque du Maroc. He was a foreign exchange student with my parents, stayed there I'm not sure how many months, and then I had this occasion to go visit him and his wife when I was single in 1967, coming home from Senegal, and then in 1970 married after 2 years in Brazil. And in both cases, Tiff, as we called him, a wonderful host, truly a wonderful host. In both cases he took me, and the second time me and Joyce, for a car ride to Fez, the city of Fez, which is inland further and a little bit into the mountains. I was not as schooled as I should have been. I was really maybe not quite ready in terms of research and knowledge for what I was seeing in Morocco. It was amazing. As a matter of fact, I could jump down here. Yeah. The eyes, where did I write? The eyes, yes. I remember Abdeltif Seket, his wife. It was French. We had to speak French at the time, but not so bad for me because I'd been in French-speaking West Africa. With the veils and all that. And I remember discussing that, and she or they were saying that the eyes become so important in that culture, women's eyes. The eyes, and the whole thing with makeup, that is a world, because the eyes is basically what women have, and she explained that there's a whole language involved with those eyes, and I had asked her, can you show me? Can you show me a little bit of that language? And she really couldn't, because it would have been too honest, and in a sense maybe too intimate. You couldn't play with the language really, and I was a guest and a foreigner, and so but I believe her. I believe that is there. And that whole thing about makeup, I just never bought into it. I know when I taught public school, I taught kids that were 13, 14, and I remember always a certain feeling of disappointment when I saw that the girls were beginning to use makeup for the first time. And I thought, why? Why do you need makeup? But there's obviously something to it, or it wouldn't be there. But I think it probably very much comes out of that world where the language of the eyes is so important. Well, I saw some of that. Also, the food. I'm sure I experienced this the first time as well as the second time. We went to the same place, Abdeltif Seket's relatives, in-laws maybe. I think he had a carpet. His father-in-law possibly had a carpet store in Fez. And we went there and stayed there, and it's the best food up to that point that I'd ever eaten in my life. Moroccan food. I'd never really heard of it. Didn't know much about it at all, but it was the best I'd ever had. You eat with your hands, no knives and forks. You eat with your hands, and you eat out of a single out of shared bowls. You all sit around a big round table, and you eat out of shared bowls with your hands. But that might sound so unclean. Well, you break bread. Everyone has their own bread, and you break your bread off, and you dip the bread in you pick your food up with the bread. And the other thing is too, I'll say I'm using my right hand even now, even though I'm left-handed. And you only would use your right hand because your left hand is unclean in that culture. Your left hand, go catfight. Your left hand is what you wipe yourself with. It kind of remains as this is the unclean hand. Here is your clean hand. I learned both times about something called a squat plate. They don't have toilets. The last time I saw a squat plate was in Portugal, about 4 years ago. There's other places they exist. Anyway, clearly a different culture. This was a different culture, but enormously different. But it still didn't really quite have the same impact on me that the Quechua culture of Peru. With Peru, it truly was very, very different to me. I mean, obviously this is different, but the United States comes out of the old world, and this was old world, a different part of the old world from what Americans and Europeans usually think of, the Arabic culture. But nonetheless, it was old world and absolutely wonderful. But it did not have that same effect on me that the Peruvians did. Oh yeah, the bus ride. I should say something about that. On the second time, we were riding the bus from Casablanca to Rabat, and we were sitting at the back of the bus, and there was this tourist. I'm just telling you because it's a story, but you might be amused. There was this English, I think he was an English tourist sitting back there, and he started to do something strange here out of his backpack or whatever. He pulled out and began to assemble a pipe, a bong, for smoking marijuana. He put this whole thing together, and the Moroccans back there, they're all looking at him wide-eyed, because of what he's doing. This was not okay in Morocco. I think the tourist feeling was, oh yeah, Morocco, that's where you can buy, what do they call it, hashish, and you buy it and it's everywhere available. And in Marrakesh, that's probably true. It's probably true, but not standard. I think you could get arrested for that at that time in Morocco. Maybe still. I don't know. But anyway, he's putting this all thing together, and he puts hashish in it, I guess, and lights it up, and then he starts offering it to everybody around him. Back in the 1960s, the hippies, they were something. The Moroccans, they're all wide-eyed, and they're going like that. My wife, Joyce, I took it. I did the hospitable thing, I said, oh, well, sure. And I took a toke or two on this pipe, and so there, it's out now. If anybody wonders, my students used to wonder so much if I had ever smoked marijuana. Well, yeah, riding a bus in Morocco, I did. And then the kids always say, "Did you get high?" Well, it was a more pleasant bus ride for the experience. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that a little bit. I can't help but thinking of the Marrakesh Express, that song by the Crosby, Stills, Nash, and maybe Young. So there you go. That's out. Formative days. That's really why I'm doing this. And yes, what was most formative for me in that experience, I would say both times, was going into the Medina. Now, Medina is a city, famous city in Saudi Arabia, I think it is. Medina and I'd have to stop here and think. One of the two most important cities in the Arabic world, but Medina. That's why I can't think of that right now. Is I'm thinking of a Medina as a generic term for what's also called a bazaar. A bazaar where it's a walled part of the city where the craftsmen all have their stuff on display, open air, and they sell it, and they even a lot of them are working right there. Well, we saw old world craftsmanship, and in a sense, Joyce and I were shamed because for 2 years we'd been working with craftsmen. That was our job. That was our world. Craftsmanship, training them, marketing their wares in Brazil. But in terms of skill, it was nothing, just nothing compared to what we were seeing. This old world craftsmanship was dazzling in every way. the craftsmen very often sat in front of their house. Their shop and their house was one and the same thing. And at the back they'd have more of a shop, but they would be working, and often on the ground. That's one of the things I later learned, that in many parts of the world, craftsmen, they work on the ground instead of on a bench. You get up into Northern Europe, and what we usually think of as a craftsman is working on his workbench, but they were working on the ground. So that was formative, to see such incredible craftsmanship, and intimidating. That, and the one other thing I'll share about Fez is the water system. Well, no, wait, there's still another thing. There I learned about those streets that were narrow and ugly, really, and bare, just high walls, narrow, high walls, big, thick doors. But since we were with Abdeltif and his family, we got to go in the doors. And you go inside, past that wall. Inside, there's a virtual paradise of a garden, of gardens, of fountains, of water. You know, the cities were not necessarily safe, and the streets were not actually safe, and so that was the normal way to build a city. I think in Rome and a lot of the Mediterranean, that's kind of the way it is. But so different from here, say in the United States anyway, where you've got lawns and grass, and Northern Europe as well, where everything it tends to be open. So different. All right, what was I going to say about? Oh, the water. In Marrakesh, or not Marrakesh, Fez, there I understood for the first time how water worked its way down through a city, gradually getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier, until down at the bottom of the city were the dye vats, where people would dye, workers would dye wool, and the donkeys would go up the cobbled streets, still with the dye dripping off them, and they would take the dyed wool, I assume it was wool, up to where it was then worked in various ways with the various craftsmen. Well, it's a world. I have my serious doubts that I'll ever get back to Morocco or that world, but as you can maybe see, or as I'm trying to explain, little by little, my experience with craftsmanship and the trades was growing. Well, there I gave a shot at Morocco, and thank you, Abdeltif. Your hospitality was wonderful. And then we got on a plane and flew to Lisbon. And next time I'll be talking to you about our first experiences in Lisbon, 1970. Bye for now.